I actually wanted to start off by talking about your wife. I wanted to take you to way back when your paths had crossed at a party. I guess she ended up, because of something you said, wasn't having any of your game.
I think I had another girlfriend, or something, and girls don't like that, So but those were back in the single days, and everything was good, and there was a lot of things that some I try to forget, to be honest with you, Graham.
He kept coming around, and he just would say hi to me. And a girlfriend that was there asked me, she says, "You know that guy that comes around and says hi to you?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you're in his house. His name is Tom Izzo. And I just want to tell you that he's got a girlfriend here." I go, "Oh, okay." And so the night went on. I was going to grab a few cookies off the table just on my way out on my drive home. And he comes up and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I was just going to grab a few cookies on my way out." He says, "Well, it's going to cost you." And I just dropped them and I walked out. That's the very first time I met Tom.
How did you guys next connect?
He called me one time.
Okay.
And I said, "I heard you had a girlfriend." He goes, "Well, yeah, there is someone I'm seeing." I said, "Okay." I said, "Why don't you call me sometime when you don't have a girlfriend?" And I just left it at that. And
click.
I hung up on him, yeah.
Like literally hung up.
I did.
I asked her out and she said no. And so just added to the list of no's over my career. And then I went up to Northern Michigan to speak at a clinic, and I walked around a truck and there was a board hanging out, and it hit me right here and put a big gash.
I saw him at a concert and he had a big black eye, and I said, "Hey, what happened to you?" He says, "What?" "I ran into a 2x4. I said, "What?"
I think she felt bad for me. So then I was a little bit, okay, never really went out with her. And then it was the week of the Purdue game, championship game. It was us and Purdue playing for the Big Ten championship. And I told my secretary, I said, "Hey, here's 2 tickets. It was the hottest ticket in town. Give them to your sister-in-law. Tell her to bring her boyfriend."
So she said, "Lupe, you got to come. He really is a nice guy. Just give him a chance." And my mom, she got my mom involved, and my mom said, just give him a chance. And I said, "Okay, I'll go to the game."
Wait, she got your mom involved?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I went to the game, and I did bring a date. I brought my 8-year-old nephew at the time, and I got into my seat and I noticed that he looked up and he saw me with Dylan.
She brought my secretary's son, who was 7 or 8 or something, and then every year now she sits in the same exact seats in the last game of the year with him, who's now 40. Started out a little rocky, a little banged up, ended up okay.
Your wife's mom and dad were born in Mexico, immigrated came to the U.S. as kids. Your great-grandfather immigrated from Italy. To the States, Iron Mountain in the late 1800s. What happened with the railroad and the mine?
Well, that was my great-grandfather,
right.
Yes. My great-grandfather, that's what they did up there. It was mining and railroads. And I don't even know the whole story, but he was killed in a tragic accident that way. My grandfather then started his own business, and that my dad took over, and that's where all the grandkids worked. I think there were 17 or 18 of us at Tony Izzo and Sons and grandsons as it went on. But it was a shoe repair shop. They called it the Shoe Hospital. So if you need new soles, I can fix them for you.
Can you still do it?
Sure.
Okay.
You need the equipment, but I can still do it. But then it became a jack of all trades. My uncle took over one part, and he was in laying carpeting and that. So I've done that in 1 or 2 of my houses. And then my father took on the siding and windows. So it was kind of a home repair, but the main business was a shoe repair shop that all the grandkids started out in that, working at the desk, then fixing shoes. I could put a zipper in a coat. I could do some of those things back in the day. And
What do you recall from like those days when you were working in the shops?
you know what I recall? We worry about now everything, you know, don't touch this, don't do that. I'll never forget my grandfather. You know, it was a farming community up there, and he would take his knife and cut the sole off a shoe, you know, and then take his apple and cut the apple and eat the apple, you know. He lived to be 90, happy as hell. So I think I learned something from that. You know, we're so paranoid now about everything we do. That was the way to live back then.
What do you remember from when your dad offered you the company before you left for Michigan State?
Yeah, my mom wasn't real pleased. You know, I got my degree in education, and she wanted me to be a teacher. My father wanted me to take over the company business, which I had a couple of my cousins do on their side. And I just, you know, I graduated from college, and I went and interviewed for a teaching job in Hayward, Wisconsin. So I go up there and I interview, and I'm riding back, and I call Mariucci, and I said, I can't do this. I'm 22 years old, and I'm expected to maybe teach in high school, kids that are 16, 17, you know, it just didn't add up to me. So like all of us, you don't know what you're gonna do. I tell my players to this day, I think it's one of the hardest times in your life, because you got your degree, now what do I really wanna do? And since I didn't know, went back to work on my master's and became a GA there.
What do you think you learned from your mom?
My mom was awesome. She was a 4.0 student. She was a nurse. She's 96 years old and still alive.
And you moved her to Appleton?
Appleton. My sister lived in Appleton, and kind of wished I would have moved them here because they love basketball, they love football, they love sports. But I think there's always a comfort level being with the daughter, and so I moved them about 2 blocks from my sister, and that was about 15 years ago. My dad died about 6 years ago.
I've been told to ask you to teach me some words in Panese.
Yupanese.
Yupanese.
You're close. A is a big one. You know, we're like almost Canadian. It's a lot of A's. I still have my accent, but after 30 some years, I've lost part of it. You know, you got to know what a pasty is. Someday I'll take you up there and tell you what a pasty is.
We laugh at Tom a lot of times because he'll come up with a word, and I said, Tom, that's not a word, you know, and he'll come up with phrases or things that he says. He's very proud of his UP roots, and sometimes he'll just come up with some random words or phrases, and we just think it's funny.
I've been told you haven't lost that much of it, though.
Probably true, you know. I feel I have, but I guess when I talk to people, I recruited a kid from Toronto that was on our championship team, and then I ended up hiring him for a while, and it was good to have him around because the A's were real good. You know, we both spoke a little Canadian or Yupanese, either way you want to look at it.
So in terms of Mariucci, how much did the following moment kind of help in cementing your guys' friendship? It was March of '72, regional title game in Marquette, and you trail by 1 point with 2 seconds left.
Yeah, and I get fouled, and I will say, he probably didn't tell you this, but I had a great game, you know, better than him. And
he said that rarely happened, though.
Yeah, sounds like mooch. But I got fouled, went to the free throw line, 1-and-1 free throw with 2 seconds left, just what he said, and I missed it. And, you know, it was funny because kind of crumbled, and he's the guy that picked me up. I mean, we already had a tight friendship, but then the bond was one that we helped each other through his walk-on days at Northern, my walk-on days. We were roommates forever, 4 in school, and 1 as a GA and 2 as full-time assistants. Then he went to Cal Fullerton. Another year or 2, I went to Michigan State. And, you know, we've been so far apart, and yet we're best men at each other's wedding.
By the way, tell about your best man speech.
I was excited. I was playing fast pitch softball, and a ball came up and hit me in the jaw, broke my jaw. So then the doctor didn't want me going because when you're wired, if you fly and you get sick, you die, you know, you can't do it. So I said, no, there'll be none of that. So I had a pair of wire cutters that they gave me, seriously, and I had to talk to the attendant at the time, and just in case something happened. So I did my best man speech kind of by Braille. I kind of learned a couple things, and I had a sidekick kind of translate.
I was going to say, have you seen the video of it?
I did once. It was not good, but it was a hell of an experience.
I believe it was a $2,500 trailer that turned into a little business where you guys kept upgrading and upgrading into eventually a house. Explain that.
Well, the last year we were playing, we took our scholarship money and bought this trailer for $2,500, and we had bunk beds in the back, and then we had one other room that we bunked, so we were slumlords, we kind of got two other athletes to room in that thing, and the heat would go off so often that Mariucci bought a hairdryer, and he'd hang it on the bed when the heat go off. He'd turn the hairdryer on under the covers. I mean, it sounds so barbaric, but unfortunately it was true.
There'd be, what, half a dozen plus people sleeping in the trailer?
I think the most we had was 5, because his sister moved in with us, so we triple bunked our room at one time. And, a lot of people would stay. They'd come up and stay for a game or something. But yeah, we moved from that trailer across the street. That one was 12 by 60. We went to a 14 by 72. And then we went hog wild the third year. We were GAs, had a little bit more money. And we bought the double wide that they put together, which was the office. And still kept our bunk beds. Then we got to do 2 or 3 rooms we got to rent out. So we were really making money. And then finally we moved into a duplex. And that's the last. So every year we moved on up, man. We were like the Jeffersons.
And then you renovated the duplex.
Oh, yeah. Well, we bought one other house.
I mean, you did it yourself.
Yeah. I was brought up kind of building things and that. But all he did was hand me the nail, hand me the hammer. But, man, we used to work all day. We were GAs. And I took a little high school job about 15 miles away. We'd come back. We took night classes 4 days a week for our masters. That would go from like 6 to 9 or something. And then we'd go work on this house we were fixing up till 2, 3 in the morning, and took a couple sleeping bags. This sounds so ridiculous now. I'm embarrassed, but 2 sleeping bags. We just sleep on the living room floor because we didn't have any beds in there then. And, we were cutting paneling, and so sawdust would be, we wake up in the morning, sawdust, and then back to teaching class.
How did it end up looking when you guys were finished?
Not bad.
Okay.
Not bad. It was a pretty good place. It was 4 bedrooms, so we collected a lot of rent.
Yes.
Still had bunk beds. So every year, but the very last year, we finally had our own rooms, so.
I assumed you guys had grand ambitions from the beginning, and he was telling me that actually, no, you guys wanted to be teachers and coaches, much like these high school coaches who, outside of your parents, you guys really looked up to.
Yeah.
Explain that.
We had some incredible high school teachers and coaches. In fact, to this day, once a year I host a party here. They come down, 60 of my former coaches and teachers, and now some of them have actually passed away, but some of them had a lot to do with our success. When you hear the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, we had a hell of a village. Now, you couldn't get in much trouble there because wherever you lived, there's a good chance the principal lived on one side, the superintendent on the other, the football coach behind you, and the chief of police in front of you. So if I got in trouble, my parents knew before I got in trouble.
So you guys thought you were going to be teachers and coaches. You guys, I think, learned driver's ed, expecting to teach that. But when did that ambition start to change?
We did take driver ed just to try to make a little more money, and that was interesting. A couple of classes. Still got my certificate. If you can't drive, I'll teach you. But we were GAs, and we said, man, this coaching thing could be good at the college level. And it just happened, as fate would have it happen. That next year, you only had 1 assistant in basketball and only 4, I think, in football and Division II schools. The guy left Northern in basketball. Glenn Brown hired me. The guy left in football. They hired Mariucci as a quarterback coach. And so we were 23 or so, and we both had full-time assistants making less than part-time money.
So where does jackhammering rock and picketing with the Tilden miners fall in there.
Yeah, geez, bringing up a lot of things there. So we figured our junior year of college, we had to make some money, you know. It's hard to get a date with no money. And we had none. Pizzas were running out. So we had a guy from our mountain was the union boss of a couple of the big unions that worked at the mines. So we kind of snuck in the back door, which caused some problems because people didn't appreciate that back then. I didn't understand it all. I'll never forget one of my two favorite things was, you know, they gave us the big 90-pound jackhammer. And so one day we get to there and they said, well, you guys got to chisel this rock down. I swear to God, to this day, I don't think it was for any reason. I think it was punishment. And we weren't very skilled at it. And then they'd come by and call us everything in the book. And there was no, I don't think there were any HR departments then, you know. They called you whatever they wanted and did whatever they wanted. And then one day, the iron workers weren't real happy either. So we're there and put our coats down in our lunch bucket, come back at noon, and I grab my coat and I put it up and there are all kinds of holes in it. And the iron workers were welding up there, and I look up and they're all laughing. Those guys were crazy, you know. So Mariucci and I had a good experience in that. You know what that taught us?
What?
Get your degree and maybe be a coach.
So you end up coaching high school for a year.
Yeah.
You're then assistant coach Northern Michigan for a few years. This is the early 1980s. And for whatever reason, you always found a way those few years over to East Lansing.
Yeah, and I came down to Michigan State when Magic was, I think it was his first year, it was 78, yeah. And I watched practice and I just said, wow, Jed Heathcote was, I mean, he got after Irvin. I mean, he got after everybody. And so I said, someday I'd like to work for that guy, you know. And
when you started going down consistently, were you just trying to put in FaceTime to create an opportunity for yourself?
I was, but I was also trying to learn. And I was, you know, I mean, that dream was so far-fetched. And so then a year later, a job opened here. So I just applied for it and I didn't get anywhere. The next year it opened, a different one opened here and I applied again and didn't get anywhere. And on the third year is the year of Mariucci's wedding that I broke my jaw and I was going to interview with Judd. So I interviewed with Judd with a broken jaw. And to the day he left here, he'd always come in and say, oh, yeah, you want the job, huh? You know, and Judd made so much fun of me because he was such a great guy. And
why do you think you got it that year?
Well, I didn't. When I had the broken jaw and I said, he said, you're just not qualified enough. You haven't had enough recruiting experience. And there was a GA job open. I said, what about the GA job? He said, well, you're overqualified for the GA job. I said, well, that's my problem. Give me a chance.
You remember what you were making?
Yeah, I was making $4,500 a year. And I was 20, I think 5 or 6. And I was in a bunk bed with a 3-year-old on the bottom and me on the top. And I lived that way for over a year. So that's how my career started here. And I was a GA, and GAs last 2 years. But I couldn't find a job. And so Judd kept me for the 3rd year. So I think I was the only 3-time GA in the history of Michigan State, but maybe in college sports because it's a 2-year program. At the end of that, I was out of money. My mom kept asking me when I'm going to get married at 29, and I kept asking her, when are you going to find me a woman that'll marry me making $4,500 a year? She didn't come up with a good answer. I wasn't married. And I was about to go back and take the head job at Michigan Tech University. The last day we were negotiating over video equipment. And I said, well, I'll tell you tomorrow. And my assistant, the assistant here, good friend, was a guy named Kevin O'Neill, ended up in the pros. He ended up coach at Toronto. He was at the University of Tulsa as an assistant. He was going to Arizona, called Mike, because they were friends, and said, there's a job open here. So he helped me get that job. So I went to the University of Tulsa for 6 weeks.
I was going to say not that long either.
No,
yeah.
I didn't even not even a cup of coffee. And
I'm sure they were thrilled.
yeah, that guy was not real happy with me because he had lost some assistants, and we went through a treacherous time during that period. And I remember calling Mariucci because the guy wanted to kill me, and I said, "What should I do?" He goes, "Well, just sit in there and talk to him." While he came in the office, I tried to talk to him. I didn't go over big, but Michigan State was my home, back in my home. I thought he'd understand that. He didn't. But so a couple slammed the doors in my face, and I understood it, to be very honest with you. But I was going back home with the chance to be the recruiting coordinator at Dream. That was when Dream started big.
What do you have to say to people when it comes to, pursuing your dreams and the fact that
it's really hard.
Doesn't happen overnight.
It's really hard. And our society, to me, is so screwed up, and everybody's so entitled. The process is where the biggest lessons are learned. And so many people are skipping the process. And, people say, well, that's old school. And I always say, no, that's right school. I don't begrudge anybody that can get there in a faster track. But I'll never, ever give up the GA days, the Division II days. I mean, I think the working in my dad's shop from when I was 12, I think those things helped me. So I feel bad for the guys that just come up and then all of a sudden the real world hits, because this is Disney World now. College sports right now, it's kind of Disneyland, I mean, you're flying on private planes, you eat what you want, you live where you want, now you're getting paid. I mean, it's Disneyland. It wasn't Disneyland back then. But the real world that they're about to enter in 1, 2, or 3 years isn't Disneyland.
Right.
And that's where I think we're doing them an injustice by not learning how to navigate the process and enjoy the journey.
How about your most emotional loss over the years?
Wow, my most emotional loss. I mean, I've had a lot of them, but
you've been known to shed a tear.
Oh yeah. I'm an Italian guy. Wears my emotions on my sleeve. Sometimes good, and sometimes bad. But sometimes those officials can't take a joke. What can I say about it? It's just the way it is. But I think the worst one for me was, I want to say it was 2015, when I had a kid named Denzel Valentine. We had a really, really good team. We should have been a 1 seed. We ended up a 2 seed. Middle Tennessee should have been about a 12 seed. They ended up a 15 seed. And that team shot 56% against us from the field and 53 from the 3. And we shot in the 50s and lost. And I've had about 3 or 4 that I really thought were Final Four teams. But that one was one, and it was with a group of guys. I had known Denzel. I recruited his dad out of DeMatha High School when I was a GA. I watched him win 3 state championships here in high school. He came here, and I watched him grow as a person and as a player. And I have a saying, do you like the game, do you love the game, or do you live the game? It's the 3 L's, and he lived it. And we were out in the first round. And that was hard to stomach. It really was.
It still gets to you.
You can tell. Yeah,
Why?
It does, because I think we've gone to a Final Four as a 7 seed. So I think every year we have a chance. But when you lose as a 1 or 2 seed, and you had the type of guys I had, like some teams, I mean, you'll like them all, you'll love some of them, but there's some that are special. He was special, but we were a 2, and we ran into a team that was very well coached and very good. And in all the media, well, you look past them. No, that wasn't the case. That's the difference with football and basketball to me. I tell Mariucci all the time. Not many upsets happen in football. Usually the bigger, stronger, better team wins over the 60 minutes. In basketball, we have 2 outliers, the 3-point shot and the officials. And I say that not negatively about the officials, but if your star player gets in foul trouble or something, it can change the game. So those 2 factors. And this game, neither one of those were factors. Team just played better than us.
You said it gets to you that you haven't won a second championship. Why?
Well, we've been back to 6 Final Fours, and you kind of feel like, why can't we get over the hump, and there's been good reasons. In fact, there's been 3 Final Fours we didn't get to that I thought we were as good or better than some of the teams there, but you get selfish too, like the day that we played Temple to go to a Final Four in 2001. John Chaney, one of my favorite guys, we won the game and I had to go down and shake his hand, and I kind of felt like he was America's team. Everybody was pulling for him. I felt like the guy that shot Bambi. I was like, God, I was apologizing for winning because I had so much respect for him. But at the same time, why we can't win that second one, and so I've got to figure out what I'm doing wrong.
In his career, it's harder to stay on top than to get to that top. It's harder to maintain. And I think that, he's fighting for another championship. He wants that, not so much for himself as for the program and for all the guys that are part of it.
Your first one came so early in your head coaching career, and you're an infinitely better coach now and had so much more success since then that it's like interesting how that works.
Well, you've heard the old adage, players play the game. But I think the difference is I had an incredible leader in Mateen Cleaves. I mean, he was our version of Magic Johnson.
Oh, we had a great relationship. And you had 2 guys that was willing to do whatever it took to win by any means. Because back in 1996, nobody thought it was possible to win a national championship here at Michigan State. So we had a very good bond, and he would push me. I think we helped each other grow and become better at what we both did. We didn't care about who got credit. The whole thing was win, and I think that's what helped us out a lot.
And I've had some good ones, Draymond Green and Denzel and some other guys that have been very good leaders. I like people that, I used to say drag people with them, but then that sounds like they're forcing them. So we've come up with a term that gather people. Who can gather people and make them better than they really are? That's what a great leader does. So a player-coach team is always better than a coach-coach team. When you got a real good leader, you have a real shot.
Take me through what you recall from going to Muhammad Ali's house with your team after winning the national championship.
Awesome. This was awesome. I'm glad you brought it up. I forget about some of the cool things I got to do. I'm so caught up in the problems of today, but I go to a football game, my wife and I and another couple, and I called Nick Saban. Nick was here same time I was here, and I said, can you get me a parking pass? He goes, yeah. So he gets me a parking pass, and I pull in, and I'm right by the stadium, and I pull up to this van's in front of me. This big, tall, white guy gets out of the van and looked like a player, and I'm thinking, where's your son,
Right.
And he looks at me, and he says, you Tom Izzo? And I said, yeah. And he says, how would you like to meet Muhammad Ali? And I said, yeah. I won't say exact words. How would you like to meet the frickin' president,
Right.
Because I thought he was being a smart aleck.
Right.
And he goes, no, come here. And I'm starting to say, wait a second here, this guy's serious. Doors open in the van, and out pops Muhammad Ali. He was good. He was starting with the Parkinson's then, but he came out. His wife Lonnie was with him. And I couldn't even speak. I mean, Vince Lombardi was a hero when I was a little kid, and some other great players, but Muhammad Ali to me was Muhammad Ali.
Right.
And I think I was just staring at him, and I'm sure he said, speak, but I got to know him, and I mean, in that minute, he was going up to the box, I was going to the game. So fast forward a few months, and we're going to play UConn, and we get a call from her, and she said, Muhammad would like to come to the game. Because he lived in Berrien Springs part of the time, which is an hour and a half from us. I go, wow. They were ranked 5th. I think we were 2nd or vice versa. Big game.
And how crazy is that? I mean, Muhammad Ali.
Oh, crazy.
Right, yeah.
And so he said he'd like to bring his son and a couple of buddies. I think he wanted 10 tickets. Well, it was UConn, Michigan State. It was the hottest ticket in town. But if he wanted the whole lower bowl, I was going to work that out.
Right.
He was really somebody I idolized. Some van pulls into the tunnel, and sure enough, Muhammad and his wife and his kid and his kid's friends and this couple, and So he said, you know, he kind of tells me that he's got something for me, and it was this signed pair of real gloves that he had used in sparring and that. And God, I was like a kid in a candy store. And then he says, you know, you got an alumni thing? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, Muhammad got some gloves to auction off. I think they went for 12 or 15,000. So him and I auctioned off a pair of gloves. I mean, he was just what I always believed. He was such a people person. So now he says, he wanted to talk to my team before the game. I was hoping after the game, you know? So it was before the game. And I said, if I walk into this room with Muhammad Ali, my star Mateen Cleaves, who was a street fighter himself, he's gonna go crazy. And he might take the first shot and hit the ceiling, you know? And I was nervous, right? So he gets in there, he starts doing it jokes. And then he starts doing his levitation stuff. You know, he was very good at it. And I'm sitting there like this, and those guys, I mean, they didn't know if we were playing, it didn't matter. If we were playing a national championship game, those guys were just homed in on Muhammad. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I'm gonna speak here. We're gonna be on the floor, you know, I'm getting nervous. How do I tell him, oh man, we gotta go, you know? Right. So I'm really getting nervous. And he says, time running out, coach? Probably could see it. I go, well, yeah, we got to get going, you know. And he gave a speech for about 2 minutes about what it's like to be a champion. I swear to God, my guys did not run out. They did not float out. They flew out of that locker room. We were ahead, if you check the score, I think it was 51-17 at halftime. And my poor fans thought it was a great pregame speech by me. And it was Muhammad. So they introduced him at halftime. And he sat up in my wife's box. I said, I got security for you up in my wife's box. I don't want any security. I don't want security. So I found out that it was 51-19 or 17. And the second half, people were trying to come up to the window and say, you know, and he told the cop, he says, get a table. He sat out there and signed autographs, and kind of hard for him at the time. And he signed the autographs the whole second half. He had a line around the place. And then he said he wanted to come down to the locker room after the game. And then he wanted to meet the parents. Took pictures. I mean, he taught me humility. I mean, if that guy could be like he was, it was, oh my God, it was, you can tell I'm still choked up about it. You know, then we go on, win the national championship, and we get an invite to his house for his son's birthday. So we take the bus and we go down there, and supposedly it was Al Capone's old house. It was an old farmhouse. He had a real nice office, and he had a real nice workout place. And he had a ring in there and all of his, you know, massage tables. And then he had all these posters up of some of his greatest fights, you know, Sonny Liston and all those. And I just walked around like this. And then he decided he'd spar with each member of the team for a short period of time. And he was, you know, starting to lose some of his stuff. And his wife was so excited. She said the doctors have been trying to get him to do this. And so the first couple guys, you know, he was just sparring a little bit. And then all of a sudden the shuffle started. And she goes, oh, this is awesome, coach.
Oh, he did tell me it was an amazing encounter for him, which I would love to have had an experience like that, because when people are good for so long, you always appreciate the quality of their work and what sort of made them be who they are. So for Tom to have that experience, I think, was very enlightening for him. And he shared that with me, but made me a little envious because I'd have loved to have the opportunity as well.
What about it still touches you?
That a guy of that stature had the humility to just be one of us. You know, he wanted nothing. He just wanted to be a part of it. He took me around. He showed me his place. It really taught me, no matter how big you get, don't forget where you came from, and And to me, he was that guy.
So you win the championship. You're being courted to become head coach of an NBA team in Atlanta. On top of all of that, you and your wife got married late, so started having kids late, and all of a sudden you're adopting.
Well, yeah, what happened, we won it. My daughter was 5, and it didn't work out after that, so we said, we wanted to adopt a baby. When we won the national championship, we had the parade. And our governor at the time, John Engler, had gone through the same thing we went through, the fertility things and all the things that you go through. And when I was talking to him, and I said, we're looking to adopt. He said, we were looking for that too. And he said, after it all settles down, give me a call someday. A month or 2 goes by. And I said to my wife one day, I'm going to call the governor and take him up on his offer to see if he can help, because it was very difficult to adopt. So I'm talking to him, and he's giving me, he says, get a pen and paper, write this lawyer down in this place in Kansas City. And he was trying to be very helpful, and I appreciate it. And all of a sudden my secretary comes in, and she says, Nick Saban's on the phone. I said, tell him I'll call him back. I'm talking to him. I didn't tell her I was talking. I said, just tell him I'll call him back in a little bit. She came back and said, Nick says it's important. I said, tell Nick I'm talking to the governor, he's not that important. Right. Then he calls my wife.
Nick couldn't wait. He called me. And I was coming down the stairs and picked up the phone, and he said, are you sitting down? I said, sure, yeah, what? And he says, a baby boy was just born. Are you interested? And I literally fell on those stairs. I said, yeah, I just sat down. I said, yeah, absolutely.
We were on some adoption rosters, I guess, and Bethany in Grand Rapids was one, and Nick put us on with one that he knew of in Virginia, West Virginia. And so where he was from, she tells me that Nick called, and the doctor that, it was a private adoption, and we went through and had called him and said they had a little boy, and we had like 2 days to decide. So I called the governor back, and I said, you're not gonna believe what just happened. All this in about an hour.
Yeah, well, we had used Dr. Coleman, who is, probably an angel from God when it comes to, placing children and helping people. And I told Tommy, I said, this lady's great, so I called her, and she was more than willing and happy to try to help them. And I guess it worked out great for them.
We expedited it all. They had a home study on Sunday, and Monday we went down and picked up Steven.
What was that like, going down to pick him up?
It was kind of scary for me because already there was talk about maybe this was going to happen. And I was frightened that it wasn't going to happen. And so I just said, Tom, let's just go. And we went.
It touches you even thinking about it now?
Yeah.
What is it that's so emotional?
Because I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have Steven now. Steven's such a big part of our lives and such a big part of my life. And we went down there. I'm not kidding. When I first saw Steven, he put his arms out to me. And he was 4 days old, and he put his arms out. There's just no way that I was ever going to be, we were going to be separated anymore after that.
Everybody wants to have their own, and we had Raquel, and everything was great. But the cool part of it was, we went down. My wife's Hispanic, I'm Italian, and this guy was an albino. His hair was white, and we saw him, and it took about maybe 10 seconds, and it didn't feel it was any different than your own. It just took here, holding him, that's our child. It was immediately, I think, immediately. It was one of the neat things that I'd always tell people, if you go through things, adopt, somebody's waiting for you. And it was great for us, and he's been absolutely awesome.
What do you think you learned going through the adoption experience?
There's a lot of bureaucracy in adoption. And that's the only thing to this day, I wish it would change. I understand the reasons. I think there's a lot of good people that would adopt, and yet it's a process. But I also learned the wait was worth it, you know, and at the end it was all worth it.
How about the sacrifice that you think your family has had to make because of your career?
Well, I think that's what people, they see the lights and the action and you know, all the things that go with it. There are sacrifices you have to make, but as they say, anything worth having is worth sacrificing for. And, you know, we live in a nice house, we have a nice cottage, but the sacrifice that your family makes is you're not around as much. And your wife ends up raising your kids.
It's been very hard not being able to have him around because, you know, he's, you know, doing what he's got to do for not only the program, but the university and the players, you know, as they grow. Personally, yeah, I'd like to have them around more. But I also understand that, you know, we'll get our time, and we do have our time.
Right.
But it's not traditional.
Summers were always weird because that's the recruiting period, so the time you get off usually, or that we would all have off, it's like his busiest time of the year,
Right.
kind of.
I think his senior year, I made like 5 or 6 games of his. I went and sat in the corner, and you know why I did that? Because I realized all the parents are complaining about the coach. So I said, I'm liable to say something, because I never complained about the coach. My kid didn't play, I didn't complain, I understood, I knew.
Lupe was saying, because your son's been on your team, that she thought the experience was going to be most beneficial to him. And in fact, she quickly realized it was
Wow,
the other way around.
What a great statement that is. There is definitely the truth that he helped me out. Gave me a different perspective on life, that everybody comes in a different way. And sometimes that path is a little tougher. And you think you're helping him, but the truth of the matter is he probably helped me more than I've helped him. I've raised everybody else's kids. Well, my wife raised mine. Because you're gone so much, this is my chance to recoup it.
It's way to come out of there, Steven.
What's been the best part of being able to spend like this amount of time together over the past few years?
The best part is just the time. It's a blessing and sometimes a curse, but overall it's been a blast. And then just like the traveling, just being on the plane or being on a bus with team, that's like the best memories you can have. Every away game we have, we take a picture before pregame, stuff like that.
Come on, Steven, get up. Get up, get up, Joey.
What was it like coaching him?
Well, it's been interesting. You know, I have a tendency to say what I want to say, and sometimes the letters of words, I keep mine simple and small, you know, like 4 letters and under. And I remember him coming home from one practice when he was probably 10 and said something to my wife, and he learned the rule then that what goes on in practice stays in practice. It's like Vegas. Well, then when he joined my team, so the first day, the first rule was what goes on in the locker room stays in the locker, because everybody hates their coach, you know, bad practice. I can only imagine, you know, this is the 4th year he's been here. He has never brought one thing to me, which I'm kind of proud of him. Sometimes, though, I'd like to know what they're saying. But I never go there, and he never goes there. He's never said a word. It's been awesome. But I can only imagine. Can you imagine what he's taken at times? You know, somebody sitting there ripping your dad in the locker right next to you.
I'm not a narc. I'm not a narc. I probably started the trash talk more in the locker room than anything.
Okay, give me an example.
Just when we have like a bad practice, I'm like the first one to just gaslight everybody, because I get more mad, and then I just like let it loose, and then everyone's like, all right, he's letting loose, like we'll let loose.
I read this somewhere that when you're at home, you'll feel guilty.
Yeah.
You aren't working, and when you're working, you'll feel guilty you aren't home.
I said guilt is the greatest word in my dictionary, my personal dictionary. The word guilt is always there.
This happened a while ago. I think one of your friends lost their mom, and you called your friend up to see how he was doing, and he said he was doing fine, and you said, bullshit. And what was it about his response that really struck you?
His response actually hurt me. And I said, oh, don't give me that BS. You're not great. You know, it's your mom just died at 7:30 this morning. And he says, you know what? He said, I took her to church every Sunday. I took her out to eat. Got to the point where his mom didn't know him. He goes, even if she didn't know me, I went there. He said, I have no regrets. And a few years later, my father died. And I said to him, I have a lot of regrets. And, you know, then they tried to say, people try to make you feel better. And it's true, you know, I got this job, and a couple of years later, I did buy my parents a house. And I bought them a car, and they went to Hawaii, and they went to every Final Four, and they got to do things that somebody from Iron Mountain doesn't get to do. And they all said to me, just think what you did for your father and all the memories and all the great things, you know, when your mom got to do. And I said, yeah, but when I was at those Final Fours and he was there, it'd be hello in the morning. When I saw him, he's having a cup of coffee, and hello at night because I was working all day. So I didn't get to spend the time with him. You know, I didn't get to do that. And I do regret that. And so I'm trying to find a balance, because all of a sudden your kids go from 5 to, my daughter's 27 or 8, my son is 22. And, you know, they grow up quick, as they say. My mother's 96. I try to see her. I don't get to see her enough. So I hope that the things I was able to do for him makes up for the time I didn't get to spend.
You went through a hard time 4 or 5 years ago. I'd have to imagine one of the tougher times in your life. And I'm just curious what that period was like for you.
Well, I kept saying it was bad, and then I remembered for some of the people involved in it and the survivors and what they had to go through. It was worse for them, of course.
Michigan State University and USA Gymnastics employed the serial child molester for 2 decades.
There were at least 17 officials at MSU in some capacity, whether coaches, trainers, or at least 3 psychologists who received reports of what Larry was doing. Not a single one of them reported. Not one.
If you talk to Tom Izzo, you would think that there's a ton of support, but just about everybody else is calling for heads to roll.
But it was such a tough period for everyone that, it made you really refocus and think about what is important in life, and how can you help others that are way worse off than you. I learned a lot of good things, meaning how we have to do a better job taking care of our fellow men and women, human beings. I learned the dark side of things, how people attack you in different ways. I learned that.
Our community took a really hard hit on that, and the only ones that were standing were Tom and I. You know, we lost our president, we lost our AD, we lost, you know, other different people, and some of them needed to go, and a lot of blame was thrown here and there. But because we were the last people here, there was a lot of attacking on him. The issue was that a lot of us were being silenced, and we couldn't say anything about it because it was all under investigation. And you know, sometimes they'd say, well, if he's not saying something, maybe he's guilty.
Those press conferences were brutal.
No, they weren't that good. They weren't that good. They were, I look back, they were embarrassing. They were brutal.
I hope that the right person was convicted, and I have to say, though, that I have the utmost faith and respect for the leadership of our president, too, at Michigan State.
I'm a guy that always talks. I'm a guy that I don't think ducks many questions. And I was at a point, and our whole place and even our country was at a point where there was just not a right word that could be said, and I didn't say much. And that bothered me. It hurt me.
Did it?
Yeah, a lot, because I felt like there was an evil human being, and I mean evil, and that human being deserved worse than he's already gotten, in my humble opinion. And sometimes less said, the better. And that's not what I did for my first 58 years of life. And so I don't know if I handled it right or handled it wrong, because there was no good way to handle it. That was probably the darkest time of my career, wins and losses, those games we talked about earlier, that what was your toughest loss? Nothing compared to those 2-3 years.
It's interesting you said you don't know whether you handled it right or wrong. Steve Mariucci said it was one of the few times he's ever seen you second-guessing yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, your thoughts on that.
Well, he was right. I talked to him a lot, but who could you talk to? And I did one press conference, and I said a wrong word that to this day I wouldn't even have thought nothing of it. It was like any word I said was going to get attacked. And Larry Nassar, in my humble opinion, deserved everything that's happened. And I feel for his family, I feel for people, but those survivors did not deserve that. So I didn't know how to handle it, and I was...
What was your lowest point throughout the process?
The picture on TV of me, D'Antonio, and Larry Nassar. It was probably the lowest point in my, not adult life, just because I knew what I thought of Larry Nassar. And there I am, we're all buddies, the three of us. Those press conferences were, they were attacks. And I thought to this day, those attacks by certain media was uncalled for.
I was angry at the media. And you're the first person, I don't consider you media, but I've kind of lost respect for a lot of them, because if they didn't stick up for them, they were against them. I used to have him here all the time, having dinners and talk, and Tom was very open and talked to the media, but I think that whole thing kind of scrambled. Everybody's looking for a story, and everyone wanted the top billing. And I just saw the ugly part of it, and I had to live with it.
And you, correct me if I'm wrong, only met Nassar once, and it was
I met him
in a hospital when you were trying to be nice.
He was here 30 years, and I was here same time.
Yep.
Never ever met him. I got called. Our football team was going to a bowl game, and we had a gymnast who was seriously injured, and her parents were coming in from Chicago, and they asked me if I would go to the hospital to be the voice of Michigan State athletics, because everybody, when you go to a bowl game, everybody's gone. And I did that. And I don't know, he was making rounds, and he came by, and it was a high. I mean, never had a conversation, never knew him. But I was front and center in that picture. That for me, this will go down as something I'll remember for a long, long time.
I was talking to Steve Mariucci, obviously his best friend, and Steve was like, I thought there was a decent chance he was going to end up being gone too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where was your mind at during that time?
It's just that it wasn't right. It wasn't true. And Tom had to prove, and he stayed because we wanted to make sure that people know that Michigan State is a wonderful university. It's got a lot of great people. The community is awesome. And we're deeply rooted, and we supported us.
Completely switching gears here. You said it's harder dealing with the pressure of success than the pressure of failure. In what ways?
Well, I say that now, I'm not sure when the score was 51-49. We were behind against Chaminade in my very first game in Maui, and Magic Johnson and Judd Heathcote were sitting right behind the bench. I still remember sweat pouring down my face. Or the time we were at Wisconsin, and we hadn't scored yet. There was 7 minutes left in the half, And I looked at my assistants. I said, this could be the first time ever. Those were failures that seemed so difficult. But what I learned is once you win, expectations change. And I blame the media. I blame our fans. I blame everybody for that. And the truth of the matter is, nobody has higher expectations than me. So it's time to look in the mirror and say, hey, dude, you're the one that set the expectations.
Well, and it's because of your success that everybody else
It
develops those
is, but I fell into that
expectations.
same trap, you know, where I don't realize there's other programs out there that are really good too, and yet ours happened kind of quick. You know, fourth year we're in the Final Four, third year we win the Big Ten, fifth year we're in another Final Four, sixth year we're in another Final Four. I hope I can appreciate that sometime instead of looking at it as a burden, because once you get there, now everybody's pecking at you. You know, so it's the old, are you the hunted or the hunter? I learned early too, this was a great thing I learned early. What is success? So we win the national championship, we get invited to the Wooden Awards, which is the Heisman of basketball. I get to meet John Wooden. Wow, I'm so excited. I sat there and, you know, he said, well, hi, Tom Izzo. I was in this line and I turned to my players, I said, he knows my name. And he said, welcome to the fraternity of 40. I looked at him, thanks, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's a fraternity got to do with this, you know? And I walked over to Bill Walton, I said, hey, Bill, what did he mean by the fraternity of 40? He says, well, there's 40 guys that have won a national championship. No, you're one of them. My God, as he was talking, I was growing. Pretty soon I was 6'11". I said, wow, and I felt good. Turned around and started to walk away, and Bill said, by the way, Tom, John has won 10 of them. I left there 3'6", and I realized that I haven't done nothing yet. And I got a lot of fish to fry. And that helped me, that moment, you know. So the greatest moment of my life, I was humbled immediately.
Yep.
And I think that taught me something.
What's the most difficult part of working for you?
I'm never satisfied. I mean, never happy, never satisfied. I mean, I think that's hard for people, the ones that don't live it. And I think people don't like to be held accountable, don't like to be confronted. And I stole something from Nick when I went down there once. He had a sign that said, confront and demand. If you just confront somebody on the problem, you've done half the job. If you don't demand, it changes.
Sometimes we overlook things rather than saying anything because we don't really want to upset the apple cart in any way. But in the long run, if you confront people when they don't do things the right way and you demand that they do it the right way, it actually creates value for them because they're learning accountability. And it also helps you have a better team because everybody on the team sees that everybody's held to the same standard. So that's just something that I've always sort of thought was important in team dynamics.
I know we're going to embark on a schedule that is off the charts, better schedule than I've ever played. If you're not mentally tough, you're going to get swallowed. And so I pick different times in practice to actually pick on a player, see how he can handle the mental stress because I know what's coming.
Come on, Nick, you're too good to do that.
And then when I'm done, I'll bring him into my office and say, you got a B, a C, or a D, you know? And if it's a C or a D, we got to figure out how to deal with this. If it's an A or B, you're making good progress.
You know, we know he loved us, and he actually wanted, for a lot of the players, he wanted more for them than they wanted for themselves. And we'll run through a brick wall for him. So, but he held us highly accountable. But on the back end, we knew he cared about us, so we had his back as well.
Magic helped in that, you know. I once asked him if I could be a pro coach. And he said, hell yes. And I said, really? And he said, the great ones want to be disciplined, want to be held accountable. It's the other ones that don't. I use that every day to myself. And then trying to push people when everybody has gotten softer. But to do what I'm doing at the level I'm doing it, or to do what those players want to become, they all want to become pros. They just think it's a rite of passage. It's not.
Ball's going like this, because you're getting this thumb in there like that.
My biggest fear of the transfer rule is anybody going to learn how to fail? Because it's okay to fail. Have you ever failed?
Sure.
I failed a zillion times. You just named some of them. What kind of bad interviewer you are. You brought up all those bad memories for me. You don't learn as much from winning as you do from losing. Because when you win, everybody's patting you on the back and you got 100,000 friends. You know, I got 650,000 of them. That's how many living alum we have. But when you lose, you know, you come down here and you look around and there's nobody here.
Media, people, whatever, is hard on Tom. He's so much harder on himself than anybody else could be.
Really?
Yeah. He says, you know, he's hired to be fired every single day. That's how he lives his life.
You've said you've mellowed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
What impact do you think that's had?
A little bit of negative one.
Really?
A little bit.
How so?
Well, because I too have to make sure I'm holding everybody accountable. What do you got to do to be successful? Self-evaluate. It's one of the hardest things there is to do. You know, you can always evaluate other people. I mean, unfortunately, the media does it a lot. And I say that with a lot of positives, but those people that weren't in the practice that day, they weren't in the film room that night. How do they know, you know? I don't try to be a brain surgeon, but everybody, you know, I don't tell those doctors what to do, but everybody tells me what to do.
Well, so on the media front, you've been criticized before for yelling at players.
Yeah.
A number of your players actually kind of hold that as a badge of honor to be on the end of your wrath. I'm curious the purpose you see that serving.
Well, it's, you know, people see the moment. They don't see the build.
Right.
He got me one game. I wasn't playing so good, and he took me out the game, and he said, "You'll thank me later." He said, "Because this is national TV, and you're stinking it up." You know? So.
I think I've told every single one of my players, you know, just, you know, don't take how he says things to you. Just really listen to what he's telling you, not how he's telling you.
If you think that any blow-ups are over one time, then you haven't been to any of our reunions, because no player would come back. They all come back. I would always say, my best suit is I spend time with my guys. So if you spend time with somebody and you get to know them inside and out, they get to know you inside and out. I'm Italian, you know, I can't say hello without saying probably some bad word or something, you know, just the way it works.
I don't know, I've seen some of those videos. I'm like, man, you got to worry about your blood pressure.
Nah, they just laugh at it. They probably go in the locker room and laugh at me. But I have mellowed in that respect. The bottom line is you have to figure out every person's different and how you hold them accountable. But don't, as they say, judge a book by the cover. You know, there's a lot that goes into it.
People didn't see the days when we would go in his office and sit and hang out and talk to him about nothing about basketball. You know, his heart is pure as gold. You know, it's a lot of coaches, man. They have players and they don't genuinely care about them. We know he cared about us. You know, not only did he say it, he showed it.
Way to go, Jax! Way to go, Jax! Making them all, babe, making them all.
In 2010, you talked about how everybody talks about kids changing, but what they fail to recognize is it's the parents changing too. In what ways?
I have PTA meetings. I have a parent group meeting every Midnight Madness. Had one this year. And just talk to them about the things. And so I talk to them up front. And I ask them, how do you want me to handle your kid if he's, you know, got a problem? And then I say, well, if it says on the ticker that John Doe is suspended because he skipped a bunch of classes, how are you going to feel about that? The moms keep their hand up that they want it done. The dads kind of sheepishly bring their hand down because everybody's so worried about image now and this and that. We all went through that.
Right.
It's just that stuff has changed the world. I mean, titles mean nothing anymore. And that's okay. You know, head coach, president, Hall of Fame, champion. Those are titles. They mean nothing. It used to be your title earned you respect. I'm the head coach. I'm the principal. No, what earns respect is time spent. And I think you got to do that with every kid. You got to sell it that you're going to spend time with them. You're going to get to know them. And through that, you can tell them, through your experiences, what's right and wrong. You know, people act like at 18 you're a man now. I struggle with that because, hell, till my dad died, I was still asking him what house I should buy. You know, we don't do a good enough job. We don't think experience matters anymore. Why do you have to be 36 to be the president? Because experience matters. You know, and yet in everything else, we speed the process along so fast that I don't think people respect the journey. I don't think they respect people as much as they should. And I try to do that. And someone would say, well, if you grab a kid or yell at a kid, that's not respecting them. I look at it the opposite. I think discipline is the greatest form of love you can show somebody. It'd be easy for me to let the kid do what he wants. That's the easy road. But if you challenge him, the only way you can change him is to spend time with him, and you've really done him a favor.
During COVID, I believe you were actively trying to prevent the transfer portal and the money. Why was that important to you?
Well, I wasn't actually trying to prevent it all. The transfer portal, I just believe kids are going to make bad decisions. So you're not playing. I mean, Draymond, he played 5 minutes a game as for Tillman, Valentine. I can name you pros that they would have transferred by now because they don't want to endure the process. Transferring is not bad. Every place isn't for everybody. But why doesn't the NBA have total free agency? You have a 5-year contract or a 4-year contract. We now have total free agency. If you tell a kid to go to class, he says, well, I can go over here and not go to class. How would you feel if you had a son and you tried to discipline him for coming home late, and he said, well, I'll just put my name in the portal and go live with Johnny's parents next door. You let him come home at midnight. That's kind of where we're at. Sounds stupid. There's some good things about it, but there's a lot of unintended consequences. There's so many things, but is it teaching a guy when the going gets tough, get the hell out of Dodge? To me, it is.
What are the good things about it?
The good things are, you know, we're not all for everyone. I do think if a coach leaves, the players should be able to. Maybe that would help so these ADs aren't firing us all so fast. If I was czar for the day, I think the transfer rule should be sit out a year, you know, and teach guys the process and how to work. And yet still, if the situation isn't right, they can move.
What do you think of the money?
The money, I think we've made some mistakes. I think there should be some stipends for the kids. I think like everything else, though, it went from 0 to 180. Right. Now we got, you know, kids with maybe a lot of money. And what does that usually bring? Some problems. I think it's going to hurt the kids. Because remember now, in basketball, I think 1.1% of the players make it to the NBA. And I think 3.8 play somewhere. That means 96% of the kids at the end of their 4 years are going to be looking for their cameo money for happy birthdays. Nobody's going to want it.
Right.
How do those kids survive? What have we taught them? I promise you this, these schools do make a lot of money, but like in the Big Ten, most of these schools are trying to fund 26, 28 programs, and there's probably a couple of them making any money. So I worry about what's going to happen to all those non-revenue programs or Olympic programs, you know, as far as academically, the tutoring, the situations, kids, they get a lot of help to get through, and there's a lot of money spent on them. But do I think there should be a happy medium? 100%. But do I think it should be total free for all? I don't. We should have done a better job of getting ahead of it and coming up with a standard that is pretty equal for all, or otherwise it's going to be the Hatfields and McCoys out there, it's going to be a zoo, which it's turning into. I think the people that are making the rules are not down in the basement with us.
On the NBA front, you were close when it came to Atlanta. I think another opportunity came with Cleveland. How much did a conversation with Raquel impact that decision?
Well, the Atlanta one was big. It was embarrassing, though. They had offered me a contract. I want to say it was for like $1.5 million, and I was probably making $900,000. It wasn't a great contract because that's why you get offered that. They weren't a great team and the organization at the time, and they had called me to come back and they wanted to make me another offer. And I didn't have an agent, so I just went in there like an idiot, to be honest with you, not knowing anything. And they flew us up there, and it was me, Raquel, and my wife, and we're walking across the arena. It was brand new then, first year. We're walking across the arena, and the guy's saying, "Isn't this beautiful?" And we had all the boxes on one side. Guy's name was Pete Babcock, incredible guy, just the best. And he was kind of selling us, and he said, "Look at this big hawk." It was in the middle. My daughter said, "I don't like hawks." She was 5. I said, "Well, he just cost me a couple million probably, you know." But they did offer me a lot bigger contract. I loved the situation. And I think I actually chickened out a little bit, you know. I think I was just afraid to make the move. And I've had other offers.
There was really only one real time that we entertained, and that was the Cleveland job.
If LeBron had called when the Cleveland offer came,
well, that was,
would that have made a difference?
The ironic part is we had recruited LeBron a little bit after we won the championship. And so, you know, I went and saw him as a freshman and then realized he ain't going to college, you know, he was that good. And so he was making his decision that next week. And I wasn't trying to find out what his decision was. I really wasn't. That wasn't my place. I just wanted to know if it was okay if he thought having a college coach was good, because that was different. And so through his people, I got word that he would have been cool with that. And, you know, going or staying, if he would have been there and I know he was going to be there, would have made a difference, maybe. But I just still think that I've been a college guy. I love college, period.
I think he ultimately listened to my daughter Raquel when she didn't want him to go. She wanted to stay here.
What did she say?
She's in high school and she's made friends and she's got family here and she's made her own way, you know. And over there she'd be Tom Izzo's daughter. And so ultimately, I think that was like the tipping point where he decided that, all right, my family means a lot to me. If that's how they feel, then we're just going to stay.
I wonder if I'd make the same decision today with all the rules and the different things that are creating problems in our sport. That, you know, they always say to me now, "Well, you guys are getting like pro sports." I said, "No, we're not. They have a contract and salary caps. We don't have either one."
The dynamics of the game are different. You know, people are getting paid. It's their job. They want to. And I told them, I said, you know, if you help guys create value for themselves, they'll love you. But at the same time, it's different. I told him to make sure that he understood that part of it, because it wasn't like coaching in college exactly.
Tell about the day John Paxson, unsolicited, shows up at your front door.
Yeah, that was an interesting day. Magic and Steve Smith were doing the games on different TVs, and they traveled together, and they called me and said, you know, "I think the Bulls have an interest in you." And I said, wow, you know, the Bulls, I mean, that was a big organization. Now, Michael wasn't there then, but it was still a big organization. But they told me that he wanted to come right to my house. I had a little bit of notice, but knocked on the door and you open up, there's John Paxson. And so we came down here and talked, and that was great. And it just happened that Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, we went into the Hall of Fame together. And I remember him sitting there saying, "How come I never hired you?" And I said, "Well, your offer wasn't very good." And he laughed. And but that was a neat time.
Your wife said a few years ago that she thought you would give the NBA a shot. Do you think that ship has sailed?
I do for a variety of reasons. I think if I was 10 years younger, age might be some of it, although I feel great. But I'm concerned where college sports is going right now. I really am concerned about it. But I guess you never say never, but I got so much I want to accomplish here, and especially all we've been through in these last 5 years, including the pandemic. I want to get Michigan State to the elitist of elite levels, both from a safety standpoint, from a student standpoint, and definitely from an athletic standpoint.
The hardest thing about it is the relationship you have with the players on your team at the time. So it's never really a good time to make those kind of moves. And, you know, I think Tommy, being such a good person and having such respect and admiration for the players on his team, made it even harder for him, you know, to do that.
And there's something to be said for staying in one place and
there is. It's got its goods and bads.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got its goods, you know, as far as your family and moving and getting. The bads are, you know, people get used to it and they think the Final Four is on the schedule now. I just love the football weekends. I love the college atmosphere. I love the fall-to-roll of college. I love jogging on campus on a Saturday morning football game. Those are my favorite times, you know, and love being involved with the students. We have a camp out. We have 1,400 tents. I sleep out with them. It's just the stupid college things that I really appreciate.
You said in a 2014 interview, you weren't going to coach till 68 like Judd did, certainly not 70. Curious your thoughts on that and what motivates you today.
When I can't do or don't want to do the things, when I don't want to go on the recruiting trips, I'm sailing, man. It's going to be no thought process. I'm gone.
Man, we ain't letting him go nowhere. I don't know if he's getting tired. Don't look like he's getting tired, but we're going to keep him out there. You know, whatever we can do to keep him young, keep him going. He's 68, but we'll say he's 57. So we'll keep him. We're gonna keep him on them sidelines. We ain't letting him go nowhere.
I feel great. I think we're having some good recruiting years. So who knows how long? I don't know, Graham, to be honest with you, but it's not going to be a surprise. I mean, I'm going to know. I think I'm going to know when it's time. And I promise our fans, you, Mooch, my family, and everybody else, I'm not going past the time when I lose it.
So these are the Ali gloves we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, these are two of my favorite things because when Muhammad came here a few years ago, spent the day with us, brought us to his place after we won the national championship and signed some gloves. And me, I'm a Muhammad Ali fan, so these will be like very valuable to me. And I'm a football fan, so and I think it was 60 or 61. I was probably 5 years old.
And you were saying yesterday you didn't quite realize what that was when you...
No, you know, it was in my mother's basement.
Show you how dumb I am. My mother says, I got this ball in the basement. You want it? And I don't know, you know, and I look at it and I remember my dad getting it when I was 5 years old because Vince Lombardi used to come up to Iron Mountain and speak, I guess. And I said, sure. And as I put it in there one time and guys came by and said, that's the most expensive thing you got. But I'm not big into that, so I didn't know, but now I cherish it.
Everybody from Bart Starr, Vince Lombardi, Ray Nitschke, they're all on there. And of course, Vince Lombardi is, you know, every Italian's hero.
So we're here in your office. Anything else? I'm noticing some rings.
Yeah, the rings are, I guess those are the hard works of Final Fours or Big Ten championships over the years. It's not all of them. I got to get a little bigger box, thank God. But it's been something that I just keep here and reminds me that the more rings you get, the better it is.
I've been told you used to keep letters in your office that you would receive that were criticism, and you've recently disposed of them.
Yeah, it's been a while now. I kept them under my desk. They were, I call them love mail, hate mail. You know?
Oh, you kept positive and negative, right?
Oh, yeah, I kept them. Yeah, I had to feel good about myself, like once a year anyway.
But when you got bad ones, you would call people up.
Well, when I got bad ones, my secretaries, they always brought me the good ones.
Right.
So then finally one day I said, well, let's be real here now. I know there's a lot of bad ones. So then they started bringing me the bad ones, and we all decided that we'd call the worst letter of the month.
Is there one you remember, and then how the call went with that person?
Yeah, there was one down in Hillsdale, Michigan that she kind of was mad at me about a lot of different things, and that took a long time to hunt her down. I mean, we had to, with the internet and everything now, it seems like it's so easy, but for some reason we couldn't get to that one. We finally did, and I called very bubbly and said, "Hi, I'm Tom Izzo." And her first thing was, "You didn't read my letter." "Oh, yeah, and I'd underlined, "You dumb SOB, you this, you that." So she was embarrassed, and actually most of them became big fans. It's like everything else in the world now. They thought they could just hide behind a letter, or hide behind the texting, and that nobody ever sees it and nobody ever cares. But on the other end, there's a human being too, and so that's what I explained to him. I said, by the way, if I sent you this letter, or if I sent it to one of your kids, how would you feel? And there's always a different tone after the fact, but funny how most of them started it out, well, you didn't read what I wrote, did you? Oh, hell yeah, I did. It was awesome.
So I'm not going to ask you to play, but I've heard you play the accordion.
Yeah, I got one here. Unfortunately, a guy gave it to me, and it's almost identical to the one I have, but the one I have is at my house, and my music is there, and you don't think I can play without music. And
how'd
the
you get
only
into
thing
that?
I can play is Christmas songs. I can play about 6 of them. And I do it at my radio show every year, practice one time. How did I get into it? My mother was, she could play the piano and everything. She wanted me to be a well-rounded, it wasn't all sports. I was, I think, 11 or 12, started taking lessons, broke a couple fingers playing football and all my knuckles, all in the same year, quit taking lessons, and fast forward about 10 years later, and Mariucci and I were GAs, and everybody had to cook something for the Christmas thing, and well, neither one of us could cook. So I said, I'll play the accordion, you sit on my shoulder, collect money. We did it, and that was the end of the story. Game day, I usually, for a lot of years, I guess it's a tradition, I always I jogged.
Yeah.
Getting older now. When I looked at the Cleveland job, I know this will sound insane,
Well,
but
it almost sounded like a joke when I read that in articles, that part of the reason was
I swear to you,
football
it's
Saturday.
part of the reason. I just, how do you beat this? This is a gorgeous campus. Not that I need this for recruiting, because I don't think you have any 7-foot relatives you'd help me with, but it is a gorgeous campus. We always joke that we get all the moms and lose the players. So that happens some, but football Saturdays here are, God, they're special. It keeps you young, keeps you energized, drives you crazy. It's a little bit of all of the above.
But you enjoy that interaction.
Yeah, I'm a kind of a people guy. I've always been, where people say to you, do you want to go somewhere and be, like I got a beach house. And I got people that say, well, yeah, you should put up trees and have all this privacy. And I go, man, I need to smell somebody's barbecue, I need to look over, and guy's having a beer and he invites me over. One of the things I feel bad about is I'm not I don't read enough, so I don't think I'd sit there and read a book.
You aren't a book reader.
I'm not. I'm like back to school, Why read it when you can watch the movie? Rodney Dangerfield, my hero.
Yeah. Do you read you read the papers?
Hell no.
No?
You think I'm crazy? Why would I punish myself? Do I read the papers? I don't.
There's a couple things not allowed in my house. Newspaper, internet. My computer here, there's never been a email put on it. Ever.
Really?
Ever. No, because the way it is nowadays, anything you put down is foiable. And so I was taught by an AD 20-some years ago, you know, don't do it. And so if you email me, you better call me if you need me. Because if you email me, it's probably not happening. Party, man. Got my wedding picture taken here. Actually, at that time, 30 years ago, Sparty was in the middle of the road. And the night before the Michigan State football game, there's always people that camp out and protect it because those guys come over and try to paint it maize and blue. So we protect them.
That's funny.
And we camp out here, and they're there 24 hours a day. It's awesome for the whole week.
By the way, Mariucci was saying that one of the items on his bucket list is to one day camp out with you.
I know! He would be awesome, you know, because Mariucci's got an incredible personality, and he missed that, you know, being a pro coach, you know. You know, now that you say that, I'm gonna make sure that I do that with him, and I'm gonna have the one with the nice mattress in there. I'll let him go right on the ground, but we'll bring you back for that, just for the hell of it. These for me are the precious moments that are memory-making things that I look at and I kind of enjoy, to be honest with you. And usually I have to go to some of these tents if they're the big donors or big corporate tents.
Right.
And I usually speak or just meet some people, and
but it feels like less of an obligation to you
Oh,
and
yeah.
more something that you
yeah,
enjoy.
you know, when you've been here 39 years as a GA on up, most of those people now are friends of yours.
Yeah.
You know, some of them get a little mad when you lose, but for the most part, they're friends of yours. And plus, I get fed. Look at that. See? You know, I'll walk by and they'll say, "Hey, give me a. Hey, can I have a broth?"
What is the deal with you and chicken fingers?
They make fun of me. You know, this is finger food, man. It's quicker. Got to be quick in this job.
I've been told that those close to you have a high level of concern that Raising Cane is opening up near campus.
Yeah, maybe I'll get an NIL deal there.
You haven't been one to drink, right?
No, you know, I early in my career, a football coach at Michigan got in some trouble for almost doing nothing and ended up getting fired. And I said to my wife then, I don't think it's worth it. So, not that I never do, but in public, I just don't do it. You know, it's one of the things about the job that, you know, you're a role model for kids, and it's part of the deal. And feel better in the morning too.
Thanks for having us here. Letting us tag
Thank
along
you,
the past
Graham.
couple
I
days.
appreciate it. And your guys were pretty good. Most of them kept up with us. Shows that you're in good shape. I also would have to say, on or off the record, very impressed. You know, as a coach, preparation is more important than the actual game. Because if you don't prepare, you don't probably get to play the game the right way. The preparation you've done on some of the things you brought up through this interview was second to none. So congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Maybe we'll make you a head coach someday.